Okay, students, I'm going to bring you to um, PowerPoint slide 12 and continue with heuristics and the different types of heuristics, because I think that when we talk about these biases, it's really important. So, following along, uh, they may not be in the same sequence you have, but there's the availability heuristic. And when we talk about biases, we have to really understand all the different type of biases that are out there because they very much affect how we make our decisions. So the availability heuristic represents a decision maker's tendency to base decisions on information that is readily available in memory. So this is something you may want to think about. I think it's something that may have happened, like God forbid, a plane crash or something, a high school shooting or something like that. That's something that we have in memory, and um, the heuristic is likely to cause people to overestimate the occurrence of unlikely events, and anything that comes similar to that in the future you may think about and overblow it. But it's a bias, a tendency to it how you think. Then there is the confirmation bias, and the confirmation bias essentially has two components. The first is to subconsciously decide something before investigating why it is the right decision. For example, deciding to purchase a particular type of PDA, a personal digital assistant. This would directly lead to the second component, which is to seek information that supports purchasing the PDA while discounting information that does not. There is also the anchoring bias. How would you answer the following two questions? Is the population of Iraq greater than 40 million? What's your best guess about the population of Iraq? Was your answer to the second question influenced by the number 40 million suggested by the first question? If yes, you were affected by the anchoring bias. The anchoring bias occurs when decision makers are influenced by the first information received about a decision, even if it is irrelevant. So remember that. The bias happens because initial information, that is impressions, data, feedback, or stereotypes, anchor our subsequent judgments and our decisions on those judgments. Now, the two of the most common ones are the overconfidence bias. And the overconfidence bias relates to our tendency to be overconfident about estimates or forecasts. This bias is particularly strong when you are asked moderate to extremely difficult questions rather than easy ones. Imagine that for this particular problem, this bias might create for a sales manager or a marketing person who is overestimating their revenue for the next year, even an accounting person. Research will show you that entrepreneurs kind of differ from other individuals because they tend to go into new ventures. So often they can overestimate where things are going. And the determinations may not always be accurate. Then actually two more. One is the hindsight bias. Imagine yourself in this scenario. You're taking a particular course that meets, say, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, like this one. And me as your professor, gives unannounced quizzes every single day that you meet. It's the Monday before the class, and you're deciding whether to study for the potential quiz or to watch Monday Night Football. Well, two of your classmates have decided to watch the game rather than study, but they don't think there will be a quiz the next day. The next morning, you walk into class and your professor says, take out a sheet of paper for the quiz. What do? You look at your friends and you say, I knew we were going to have a quiz. Why did I listen to you? Why did I watch the football game? The hindsight bias occurs when knowledge of an outcome influences your belief about the probability that could have predicted the outcome earlier. So we're affected by this outcome when we look back at a decision that we made and then figure out why we made it, especially when it didn't turn out the way we wanted to. And then the last one is the framing bias. And essentially, this bias relates to the manner in which questions are posed. Consider the scenario like we're having now. We didn't properly prepare for the novel coronavirus 19. Well, the idea is we thought that there would be alternatives to that, and we thought it was something we could very easily handle, when in reality, we couldn't. So what do we try to do? We try to create excuses as to why we didn't, and then we figure out what it is that we need to do, sometimes those things being over exaggerated to try to get people not to panic, but at the same time, what is our responsibility to the facts? So these are some of the things that we want to talk about in this particular section. And I want you to think about this and take a few minutes for reflection.